advantage of that opportunity and they develop it into a business. And entrepreneurs are not just people that own businesses, they run businesses, they manage people. They're people that have figured out that there's something that needs to have attention. One of the reasons I share this series with you guys is because I think there's so many people doing so many amazing things out there that I really want to share. Plus, there's a lot of us that get stuck in a rut, right? Like we have such bad self-talk sometimes. And I'm bringing some people to you that have figured out how to get through those ruts and or have turned those into amazing successes. So today, I'm so excited to introduce this lady to you guys. I just met her recently through another contact that I have, somebody else that I interviewed very early on. And Michelle is just like doing all kinds of fun and crazy things, has been doing it for a long time, has really taken a passion and turned it into an amazing business. So today I want to introduce you guys to Michelle Johnson. Michelle, thank you so much for being with me.
Connie, this is a pleasure. And I had so much fun talking to you in the green room. So thank you. Glad to be here.
We did. What you guys have to know is before we get started, we do go over a little bit of housekeeping rules, but then Michelle and I just got to talking and almost got a little carried away when we didn't get started. So it was fun.
Good to be here.
So Michelle, tell us about you. I want everybody to see who is Michelle? Like, where did you come from? Why did you start doing what you're doing? And what are you doing? And tell us about your business as well. So give us the whole Michelle story.
Great. So Michelle Johnson out of Bowie, Maryland, known to thousands of DC, Maryland, and Virginia families as the face paint lady. Grew up in California, sales and display my entire life. My 58th birthday is next Tuesday. Woo-hoo! So I can almost say that for the past 5 decades, I have been selling, doing display, Halloween, and it's all on the job training. So I'm an autodidact who had the great blessing of learning everything within good groups of designers. So as the face paint lady, which the children named me, I have painted 100,000 faces, woo woo, over 3 decades. And I ended up with the facepaintlady.com. And I'm blessed beyond measure to have had, I consider, over 250,000 face-to-face interactions, because with each little person I was painting, there would be 2 or 3 adults. So I took 100,000, multiplied it by 3, and I safely say that I've had 250,000 face-to-face interactions with families. And that's the love of my life, of my business life.
That's amazing. So give us a little insight on how you turned doing those store displays and sales to deciding to open a business or become the face paint lady. How did that transition happen?
So I was married on Halloween. When I was growing up, a mustache, some funky glasses, and your father's stuffed shirt was Halloween. Fast forward, we all know what Halloween looks like, or at least we know what it looked like in 2019. Not sure what it's going to look like in 2020. So imagination and improvisation in space, just in the moment, is second nature to me.
Okay.
In 1988, I got hired at Kinetic Artistry for part-time Halloween help. Their phone number was 301-270-6666. And I'm like, are these Halloween weirdos or is this a real gig? So I go totally legit gig, even though there was like a sandbag and a rope that opened the door. Totally legit gig. I stayed there for 3 years. I learned theatrical face paint. And then a dear woman named Ellen told me, because I was also doing school and pumpkin tours at a pumpkin patch, she goes, Mishi, only person in the world to call me Mishi, bring your face paints out to Darrow Berry Farm and paint the kids on weekends. And that was 1991. And literally the rest is history. I've been painting faces ever since.
Oh my gosh, how cool is that? Wow. Okay, so I just love your energy too. When you're talking about being married on Halloween, first of all, who does that? That's crazy. That's fun though. I mean, it's amazing. It's just different. I mean, everybody thinks about weddings as, these storybook things. And yeah, that's a neat segue to that conversation. All right, so Mishi, tell us about starting your business. What happened when you started that business? I mean, obviously you started going out and doing face painting, right? But now we are talking about business. Like, how do you go from painting a couple faces to running a business? Tell us about that a little bit, because that's a big stretch.
So now I'm the Face Paint Lady Inc. I've been an S Corp for 10, 15 years. I began as Painted Faces Inc. And recently my really cool CPA and I changed the name to the Face Paint Lady Inc. I started in 1991 painting, got insurance, very hygienic, started painting for the Bowie Bay Sox in 94. So I was painting 200 and 300 people an evening, and the money's coming in. And my children, my adult children, now 26 and 22, I got to spend time with them and then go out and have a lot of fun and throw paint around. I like to interact with people, and it was just fun to throw color around and bring in cash. But I've always carried insurance and had a business structure behind me. So often I'm kidding, or laughing, but I'm not kidding. It's a serious business. But of course, I've had to totally pivot with.
Yeah, of course. So before this, let's talk about that, because, here's somebody who, has all this energy, is really excited about painting faces, but now you created a business. So you got to figure out some of the structure of business things. So tell us some of the things that, you were out and painting faces, and then you said, oh my, all this money's coming in. I got to figure out some pieces, some mechanics. So what are some things that you had to realize that you really you weren't prepared for? You said, oh gosh, I just had no idea I was going to have to do that just to paint faces. I mean, you've given us a little bit. You got insurance, you incorporated, obviously you're an S Corp, which is fantastic. But obviously, you had to hire some people. You had to say, oh gosh, I need a little help with this and that and the other. So tell us a little bit about those steps, because I think sometimes people who start a business don't always realize, hey, I have this great idea. Hey, I'm going to start doing it. Oh shoot, I need to know this and this and this.
That's a great question. Thank you. We do need that structure behind us, especially when we're creatives, Connie. I have had probably 4 or 5, maybe 6 accountants, because this has been 3 decades. And you need to find the back end professionals who can really communicate with you and understand what you want to do. So my accounting is totally on par. QuickBooks, one of my accountants wanted to teach me to do QuickBooks, and no. It's
Your creative side could never do that.
Well, I could do it. It just wasn't the best use of my time. Right. So now I'm right on top of my numbers. I got to apply for an arts grant. Since my accounting is on point, taxes done, everything in order, personal property tax returns, all my returns are on point. And that is a blessing to have your money in order. So that's a back end individual. Then the tech end has to be my children. And my son just quipped with me today as they're helping set me up. They're like, aren't you glad we gamed in our childhoods? And the answer is,
oh my God, I love this. This is so good. So let's go to the accountant for just a second, only because I feel like that's a place that a lot of people just have no idea. And so obviously you went through some different things. And what's your thought on that? What's your advice? I mean, obviously you went through 3 different accountants. How did you obviously said at some point, gosh, I need somebody who can manage all that. But now you can do what you want to do in your business because you have found that person that's the right person to work with you. So your thoughts about that a little bit would be great.
When you have access to your financial statements, and when you look at them at a quarterly basis, and you can ask the questions from your money, your tax professional to understand, then you can make really sound decisions. And when you go to seek funding, etc., you can understand, what should I do? What tax should I take? And the people who are going to fund you are going to want to know those things as well. And the reason we're doing this, I mean, I'm having a lot of fun, but we're all here to make money, period.
Yeah. Oh, fact.
And it's the language. It's the language of dollars. So being on top of my accounting has allowed me to learn a new language. And the language of cash is spoken everywhere.
Yeah, that's a fact. And I mean, ultimately, as any person in any kind of business, whether you're running a business or you're running a business inside of a business, or you're a leader of a business, manager, whatever, I mean, ultimately that business can't function. Those people can't get paid unless money is coming in. So, I mean, and we all realize that even more now than probably we ever had enough awareness before. But you're absolutely correct. And so in your case, what you're talking about is one of the best things that you learned through that is knowing that having an accountant that put all those pieces in place. So you actually had a clear picture of your business all the time. So that was really important. What about some other things that you figured out through the process that you needed to be on top of that really didn't have anything to do with face painting? Excuse me. Like maybe obviously you said your kids helped you a lot with tech stuff. How would a face paint lady need to know tech stuff? Tell us about some other things you learned that you needed to know about.
Website. And same thing. I've gone through so many or I shouldn't say I've gone through. I've interacted with so many website developers, and to have an active, findable, Googleable, long tail keyword website that is not just static, but shows life and represents your brand. That is no easy feat. And all of us, I don't know. Maybe I'll ask that question of the next 10 people I see. How do you feel about your own website?
Mm-hmm.
I don't ever really hear people say, man, my website's on point and totally represents me.
Very good point. Very good point. And in your case, particularly, I mean, especially as we go more online, having a place where people can find you easily has probably been very important. So that's an interesting point to point out. So how did you get the advice about when you talked about incorporating? Where did that advice come from? What made you make that decision? Because I'm envisioning a lady who runs around and that's diminishes that, but goes around very methodically and is finding sources to be able to do the painting. You obviously went to the Bowie Bay Sox, which is a minor league baseball team, and said, hey, I can do this. I want to do this. So you're doing that. You're doing, children at a pumpkin farm, and you're doing other things. So you're finding those avenues. And then you say, oh gosh, maybe I better get incorporated. That just didn't come out of your head. So there's a reason that happened.
And Connie, you were right in saying that I was running around painting.
Well, I didn't mean to make that sound unimportant, because absolutely not. I mean, there was some definite methodical pieces to that for sure.
And now I forget the question, which is the funnest thing. Incorporation.
Yeah. What made you think that you had to incorporate?
I didn't want to lose my house. I didn't want to lose my house. And I carry entertainers. I wanted the business to be its own body. So even though it's the face paint lady and it's literally me, and I worked with some individuals, or actually I didn't have employees, but I would subcontract them, and some of them would subcontract me as well. It just seemed, I didn't want to put my family at risk for anything that might happen. And my business was very face-to-face. As a matter of fact, Connie, it's so interesting. I just got my first request since I painted last on Friday, March 6th, because face painting, I'm so glad that I had the blessing of painting for 3 decades and 100,000 faces, because it's not going to look like it did anytime soon. But since I have a large network of painters locally that I'm familiar with, I should interview and initiate the conversation with them, because all of us are having to pivot. And the request that just came in on my phone was, are you painting in June? We're going to be at a pool. Do you have waterproof paints? So the answer is yes, I have waterproof and water resistant paints. Yes, I like to swim, pools, got it. But I really need to think through what that means now.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. Well, I like that you brought up the fact, and a lot of people who jump into the entrepreneurial world don't realize that you have some of these ancillary things that I like to talk about that are necessary to protect the people that you're working with, and also to cover your finances and make sure those things are in the right place. So very important. And I'm glad that you said that, because the one thing that when you start something, creating it as a business does afford you is the ability to let that business stand on its own, and you're the person that works in that business. And then it also protects not only you, your family, but also the people around you that you're working with. So I really appreciate you sharing that. That's really important. So let's talk about, that was fantastic. So let's talk about what some of those things, you're talking about how this looks different going forward in your business. So obviously in 3 decades worth of painting, you've had to pivot, you've had to change, not just because of coronavirus, but you've also had to pivot in other ways as well. Talk to us a little bit about that, because I think that when somebody goes into a business, they're not thinking, oh gosh, I better have, like a plan A and a plan B or a backup or some ideas of how I'm going to do it. And the thing that's harder in this entrepreneurial world is when things happen, people aren't prepared to make those changes, don't have an open mind, and get stuck, and sometimes can talk themselves right out of business. So talk to us about some of the things you've had to make changes on.
Great question. It was
Thank
simple.
you.
Yeah.
I love this interview. It's so fun.
Have more time to process and answer. I kept things extremely simple. I am the face paint lady, and I paint with a sponge and a brush. I didn't morph into airbrush. I don't do glitter tattoos. I do have some pens that are more permanent and some things that I do. But I did that extremely well, being creative in the moment. So I've painted for the Maryland Zoo, the National Zoo, the National Gallery of Art, and I loved it. Still do. It's my energy. Your question was asking people how to pivot. So you know yourself, or we get to know yourself. So as entrepreneurs, if we know ourselves, where our strengths and weaknesses lie, if we come to accept ourselves, and then you start to focus, knowing that the best laid plans of mice and men, you just keep believing that every experience that you had, everything that's presenting itself to you is for a greater good. It's going to put money in your pocket. It's going to get you out there, and you just keep laughing or failing your way forward, however you want to phrase it. But the struggle is real, and we also make it bigger than it needs to be. So I can just guarantee, and my family knows I don't promise because I can't guarantee much, but in this case, as entrepreneurs, kind, methodical persistence in being your authentic self, you can't go wrong. Not each of us needs to own a business. We can get into hubs and groups, but there are strengths that you have that somebody needs to hear. Bring it forward, own it, and put yourself out there.
Gosh, there's so many good things right there that you were talking about. And I wrote some notes, but I think I'm probably going to miss some of them. But one of the things I really like that you talked about is, even though you maybe didn't have to pivot, like, because you didn't do different types of painting, you had to constantly evolve your brain skills because, it's so easy to talk ourselves out of stuff when we get stuck somewhere. And you just are talking about continuing to evolve and continuing to believe in yourself to make sure that you're continuing to grow or be forefront involved in what you're doing and believing that you're doing the best version of you. So I love that because I really feel like people, sometimes we don't. I mean, it's so easy to let somebody else say to us, oh, why would you do it that way? Or why wouldn't you change your thought about this? Why wouldn't you start doing more permanent body painting kind of things? Well, because I don't want to, but being true to yourself is hard, especially when you have a lot of conversation in your ear. So that's really a really cool event. So, or a really cool comment that you were talking about. I know somebody said to me once recently, that's why there's erasers in the world, because, we fall and we make mistakes and you just erase it and move on. And I love that thought because it's it, not everything that we do is set in stone or should be.
We can trust that we are being given the skill sets that we need, and you just focus in on the love, really. And before COVID, pre-COVID, I was reimagining myself. When I began, I was one of the few face painters that I know locally, never been a clown, and always a creative entertainer. And it's what I imagine next after all of this is that humans slow down and reintroduce themselves to their own art selves. Public art, I think, is each one of us. So I think if we can come to really appreciate our own selves and then genuinely love up on others, which is what all of this wonderful interview does. I mean, I can appreciate what people are doing. Connie, I mean, she looks great. She's together. She's pulling all of us together. She's got great insights. And when you start to really key in on other people's brilliance and then turn around and shine that brilliance on yourself, I mean, we're becoming better people because we're faced with very large challenges. And the better businesses that we can build and run, the more that we'll be able to help where help is needed.
Gosh, I love this. This is just so good. I mean, it's, you speak to all of the maybe happy sides that we need to remember about, and the negative sides, putting that in a lot of perspective. I love it. So let's pivot a little bit here in the conversation, and let's talk about what sets, what you feel like maybe is your superpower. And let me qualify that, because superpower is two things. One, it's the thing that you think that you do really well. It is makes you your best self. But then I also want to know, what is the thing about your business that makes your hair on your arm stand up, your hair feel like it's on fire? You're like, aha, that wonderful moment when you do something in your business that you go, this is why I do this every single day. So tell us those two things for you.
You are just knocking it out the park with these questions. Okay, Connie, my best place that I enjoy being in public with my company, and one example could be the Crofton Farmers Markets. I have 2 10x10 bright green tents with my logo on them. I would be positioned.
Let me qualify by saying this lady's logo is her face with the words on it. It's phenomenal. You got to see it.
And this is my COVID cut. I realized for hygiene purposes that I used to style my hair by rubbing it. Not such a good idea. So I'm literally keeping my hands off my face. That's another story, but that's my superpower. It's this color green. My tents are this color green.
Nice.
And when I'm really rolling, after doing this for so long, I can have a couple of kids and their families in my tent. I can see someone down the alley, and I have a big enough voice to holler out and connect and wave. And I'm really in the moment, and I'll see a little kid over there and you look at them. So that ability to be physically present and to connect is thrilling to me.
That's exciting. And of course, we can all see your energy as you're talking and talk to that child down there. No, it's phenomenal, because that is your superpower. You're very animated, and people are drawn to you because of all of that energy and all of that. But it also shows on your face. When you just explained that, it was really fun, because seeing you glow when you're talking about making that little person's day, getting their attention and getting them to come to you is really fun. That's what that extra superpower I'm really good at. It sets my whole soul on fire kind of thing. That was clearly showing when you were talking about that. So Michelle, talk about you talked a little bit about applying for grants and things like that, and how maybe you found like you had to learn how to go out and find some of this business, find some of these opportunities, because you're in a very specialized kind of situation. And as an entrepreneur, sometimes you run into the, oh gosh, I'm not really sure how to get to the next level or how to move this needle forward, instead of just painting some kids at a fair. So, not that isn't just as fun, because that's of course what just lit your whole conversation on fire. But obviously some of these other bigger gigs were a little bit more of an event that you had to go through some processes. So talk about how you figured that kind of stuff out, because I think sometimes people might look at you and say, gosh, I mean, she's doing all of these faces. How did she go from here to there? So obviously you did a little work there.
I showed up. I went viral before any of us knew what viral was.
Okay.
Oh my. I was persistent, and I picked up the phone and I made phone calls when I first got the Bay Sox, which was 500 games over 6-7 years. I scoped it out and went into the general manager painted. I went into the stadium at first to look around, and that's what gave me the introduction to all of Maryland that was going to watch the Bowie Bay Sox. And events. It was perfectly timed for me, because when I began, there was not a face painter at each event. So, and then once my friend said Mishi, and you guys better not start calling me Mishi. People are
I think that might happen, but go ahead.
I kept seeing opportunity to have fun. And if we think in the back, the prior 3 decades, we got together. There were so many events. And when I first began, I would have to ask, the first 5 or 10 years, would you like a face painter? And I've stood in all places face painting. And then it got to the point where it was one of the first 2 or 3 things that people thought of. And literally, I had to do no marketing. because I showed up for so long as a soccer coach, a parent, a mentor, a volunteer. I've painted my children's whole elementary school in one day. You just do these things over time. Did I answer the question?
You did. And you know what I like about this is you really hit on something that I talked about yesterday on my coaching series is, showing up and doing things for other people, because, we do that. The old saying is you do enough for other people, it'll certainly come back around to you. So you, in order to build your business, weren't afraid to pick up the phone, weren't afraid to walk into the general manager's office all painted up, which was indicative of exactly what your business was. But you also weren't afraid to help others get what they need or offer your services so people could see what you had available for them. And then, of course, then they trust you, then they understand, then they're looking for you, then they want you at their events. Very good advice. I really enjoyed that. That's really cool. So, Michelle, if you had a piece of advice for another entrepreneur, somebody who's stuck, or somebody who maybe isn't stuck, maybe who got past whatever their stuck is, or maybe somebody who's starting out that just is, just not sure what to do next. There's a lot of people that are going to be going through this, but even in general, what would your one piece of advice be, or maybe even two, for somebody who wants to start a business or is running a business and just is stuck?
Find out what brings you joy. You mentioned what raises your hair. When you can really hone in on your bliss, your joy, know where that fits into the full component of what makes a business solid, then focus there. Do you do that and then get the structures behind you that complement your own skill sets?
Wow, you just wound up everything in our interview series. That is exactly the stuff that we want to touch on. Find what works, find what brings you joy, and then fill in the other pieces as you go along. I love it. That's fantastic, Michelle. So, Michelle, if somebody wants to find the Face Paint Lady after today, how do they find you?
Well, you go to Google and you type in the Face Paint Lady. Something that resembles my face, a line work will pop up. I'm Michelle Johnson on Facebook, on Twitter. I'm at Face Paint Lady US, and LinkedIn. I'm Michelle Johnson.
So no Mish anywhere?
Say that again.
No Mish anywhere?
No.
Oh, it was really fun.
Connie, thanks for asking.
Nah, that's wonderful. I love it. Michelle, I can't thank you enough for being with us today. Is there anything that you have going on, an event that you're going to be working at soon that you'd like to see people at, a volunteer project that is very close to your heart that you want to share, or some project that you have going on in your business that you want to share right now?
I am creating a interactive board game called To the Point. That's real exciting, but that hasn't gone live yet. I was thinking of doing a monthly birthday party for kids. That would have to be virtual as well. Right this moment, I'm heading over to Network in Annapolis, but I'm figuring out what virtually interacting with the Face Paint Lady means. Thanks for asking, Connie.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we definitely, one of my goals is to share. As entrepreneurs, we always have our fingers in a lot of things, and sometimes it's nonprofit, sometimes it's something that's just really close to our heart. Sometimes it's not something that's really going on in your business. So I always like to give you the opportunity to share that as well, because the whole goal of this series is to help entrepreneurs out there that are listening to it that maybe could use some of the advice that my interviewees are sharing, but also to make sure that we're sharing information that's important to you, your business, and things that you're attached to. So I'm thrilled to be able to do that. Michelle, I can't thank you enough for being with us today. This has been so much fun. Probably, I have to honestly admit, I probably most interviews done. I'm so thrilled that Jim introduced us, and I can't wait to meet you in person. So thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, Connie. It was a pleasure.
Absolutely my pleasure. Well, guys, if you want to catch this interview, if you missed any of it, go to my YouTube and subscribe, Connie Fuksa. We'll also be playing it back on Facebook. Michelle will be sharing it. It'll be on LinkedIn. So the replay will be there. And also you can go check out on my website, conniefuksa.com, where I work with helping entrepreneurs discover their expertise and learn how to share it in a way that people will gravitate to them and grow their business exponentially. So I really appreciate everybody's time today. Thanks so much for tuning in. I look forward to seeing you again on Entrepreneur Live Interviews with Connie Fuksa. Thanks again, Michelle. I'll see you soon.
Thanks, Connie. See you around town.
All righty. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.